let's start with some of the challenges that these people faced. The first thing is that communication is pretty much always the problem, regardless of 5-person startup or 50,000 person organization. And I just realized I didn't stop on time. Okay, just wouldn't mind popping it up every now and again. So communication is the biggest issue, and I want to get into some key examples within these organizations. The first is Standard Bank. They had a distributed teams of people in Joburg, people in Cape Town, people in London. And in the two instances, the team between Joburg and London was sort of like explicitly managing this distribution problem. You know, they said, well, let's experiment with different technologies, let's have different rules that we put in place. For example, when they have a conference call, when they do one-on-one conversations, have multiple stand-ups in a day as experiments, get DSL lines with spreadsheet, whatever they could do to facilitate the conversation as best as possible. The most notable thing they did was they had an exchange program where they exchanged developers out and the testers out to sit on either side of the ocean. And that worked. It wasn't as good as having face-to-face communication, but it worked. The team between Joburg and Cape Town they weren't explicitly managing it. They're sort of like reactively trying to sort it out. And the issue is it didn't work. And the message here is, when you're dealing with inferior communication, just manage it explicitly to try and get it closer to what you dealt with previously. Also, one more was interesting, the product owners was in a separate building to the development staff, and they sort of thought like, let's try and exchange documentation between each other, and the documentation will bring the essence through. And I sort of said, don't use documentation as a crutch. Use documentation to enhance the conversation, but don't use it as a crutch. Go and sit with the developers, interact with them, engage with them, try and explain to them why you have these problems, what problems you have to solve. And suddenly, the amount of enhancements that we got out of the user acceptance testing dropped dramatically. So again, communication is essential. Some other organizations, you can't always manage it, and it's important that you just at least measure it. Measuring enhancements coming out of UAT is a way of doing that. G-Maven was interesting. They're a startup, but the entrepreneurial CEO that they have has got 7 businesses that he runs, and he's always busy with the different businesses, and he never gets the time to actually tell people why they're building the features, only what they're building, and as a result they sort of like got things wrong. And the moment you start focusing on why, things start becoming better. What we also found was a lot of resistance from stakeholders. The Affitech situation was interesting. I'll get into what we tried to do to fix the resistance there, and that was basically try and find some metrics that we can convey to the business and say, this is where the efficiencies are, and we used that metrics, and it's sort of like we started leveraging, like saying, guys, we really need you to just buy in because we're struggling here. By leveraging them, we ended up leveraging the entire organization except that one piece of the pie. Now suddenly everyone's like, oh, okay. Standard Bank was interesting. The governance part of a very big organization sort of said, we'll support you, we'll be there with you. The rest of the organization, not so much service management, which is very risk-averse, very process-driven. Sort of said to the guys, you guys are cowboys, you still need to do audit processes and everything, and some of the stakeholders in business as well. And just by having the support of governance, working with them and trying to deliver stuff coming out of the systems, trying to have the results of the automated tests printed out and made available to everyone. They spent a lot of time in doing that. They were able to prove, sort of nearly mathematically, that they were able to produce better quality systems than people just ticking off a checkbox in the audit. And that eventually started transitioning the service management. And these guys are on a journey, but they are progressive. Interestingly enough, one of the teams that we dealt with there, the legal guys, one of the teams that we dealt with there, they were really sort of like struggling to get up and running with Agile. They had the worst business stakeholder of the lot. She was like, this Agile stuff is terrible. You will never succeed with it. And as I was working with the team, we got to a point where they said, oh, okay, we actually stopped getting it. And they started delivering, slowly but surely. And as this business stakeholders saw that they were very busy delivering, she started saying, oh, okay, there may be something in this Agile thing after all. And suddenly she started turning, and where she was the biggest opponent in the board meetings previously, she became the biggest supporter in the board meetings. And now the CIO is able to use her and start changing the rest of the organization, which is a good thing. So I guess try and build on small successes and use those to spread out. Do the things that you can do really well. Do well, do them well. The other thing that teams also struggle with is doing one small thing at a time. Like, just getting stuff out, not trying to do 50 things at any given stage. I had this one guy at a new client tell me the other day. He said, I'm building these reports, I'm building about 20 of them, and if I build the other 20 of them at the same time, then I can leverage, do the same stuff. And I said, but then it's going to take you 40 times as long to deliver anything. Maybe you can leverage something, but it's going to not for 14 month units take something to deliver. But if you do one thing at a time, you'll get something out and get people happy. And then people say, okay, but what if I'm building a complicated thing like a car or a camera or something like that? How am I going to break things up? Well, the car is broken up into small things, and every one of those small things were done before the car and the things were assembled. So just try and minimize the technical debt and try and get through those. That's something I saw across all of these organizations. Now, what was also interesting is in these organizations that people said that we're going to put our retrospectives on these boards, and we're going to talk about our problems, and we're going to try and make it visual, and we're going to show the people to everyone around us that we failed, and that's going to expose us, and we're going to lose our jobs. We said, no, we're going to use that as a basis to build, to move forward. We're going to use that to fix all the problems, and eventually we're going to use that to leverage change in the rest of the organization. And we were able to do that. And there's no easy answer to this. You have to work with teams systemically. And I think sometimes keeping the metrics a bit back and then start spreading them out once the teams become comfortable with it. It's a very soft thing. But I think one of the cool things was that this one CRO that I work with at one says, now the truth will set you free. Now everything is out there, and there's nothing that can stop you guys are doing this wrong, you guys are doing that wrong. So yes, we know, help us fix it. I think Afitech was also very fearful of that. They were a very sort of hierarchical business organization, and they were very fearful of that because people use those things to get rid of departments. And funny enough, by doing that, they actually started changing the entire organization's culture of 4,000 people. 6 people just exposing all their problems to the rest of the organization, now causing a company of 4,000 to start transitioning their processes, which is quite phenomenal. So don't be fearful. Unfortunately and sadly, we also saw that most of the teams that we work with have way too many inexperienced engineers. There are too many inexperienced engineers to even have the experienced guys mentor them effectively. Now, scary enough, at Gmaven, this team of 6 developers, we took 3 of the developers out of the mainstream development. One went into DevOps, one went into sort of test engineer, and the other person was doing technical risk type of stuff. Very unified process. And all 3 of those engineers, I'm actively mentoring at the moment, giving them code cards and stuff to work through. And the rest of the team tripled their productivity. Tripled their productivity. That's profound. By halving the team. Okay, maybe a bit more profound than the other guys. I think Stanbank found that the cost that they pay with inexperienced engineers far outweighs the price that they pay for experienced engineers. So they just try and manage the teams and have the guys sort of mentor each other. And then finally, one law. We moved about 20% of the team out into service sort of like this first line support role. We didn't really have another place to put them under active management, active mentoring, sorry. And in that scenario, the one team specifically, the productivity didn't go up, but the quality went up dramatically, and also the turnaround times, the cycle times of the work improved dramatically. Because it was people who were focusing more time on getting quality software out of the door, and they were spending less time fighting fires. And obviously, these juniors, I said that to Kevin from Driven, and he went red in his face. It sounds quite controversial, but the reality is someone has to take these developers, improve them, and get them to a point where they are able to bring value to the organization again. But not at the expense of the organization's profitability. Okay. Now, people always talk about random buses that takes out the heroes in the IT departments, or sometimes people even hope for buses. And both of those situations are bad. I think that the fear of buses is even worse, because IT heroes actually can cause more problems in the long run, because the more they fix problems, the less capable the rest of the team becomes at fixing problems.